Hey, it's you, man, from KC95 here. Good evening and welcome to Toasted Tavern. Your host, Scott Tobin, and the man called Wags are ready to bring you the night in sports. So pull up a stool, grab a drink, and let's get toasted.
Hey, what's up, guys? Tom Franklin here at Busch Stadium. Big win today for the Cardinals. Big sweep for the Cardinals as the bats came out today in double-digit fours. Paul Goldschmidt. What a game from him. A couple doubles, RBI. He made solid contact in just about every appearance he made today. And that's a good sign for Goldie as he tries to kind of get back on track a little bit this season. If they can get Goldschmidt going, it's going to be interesting to see if this offense follows him. Saw a lot of evidence today that other bats are going to wake up today. Again, double-digit hits today. Good performance on offense. Kwang Young Kim, pretty good start. High pitch count. He was removed after the fifth inning, but he was still throwing strike. He was still getting a couple strikeouts. He didn't allow real solid contact today, and generally was a competent starting performance today from Kwang Young Kim. So finally, a Cardinals starting pitching performance that's good, and that's not from Wainwright or Carlos Martinez yesterday. We'll see if that's actually a trend or not. But Wags, Scott, the question I have for you guys, this is a sweep against a pretty dreadful Arizona Diamondbacks team. This might be the worst team in baseball. But much like in college football, when your Alabamas of the world schedule Division II opponents or like lower Division I opponents like, Appalachian State or some crap or McKendree or whoever, they need those games to build confidence back up. They need to have that taste of victory and also work out some things on offense, work out some things on difference. I wonder if this Arizona series had the same effect for the St. Louis Cardinals going forward. It was pretty positive today from the Cardinals, a pretty positive performance all around, and really all series. So, guys, is this something the Cardinals can build off of, or is this just Arizona sucks and the Cardinals still have their issues to work out? You guys discuss.
We want to thank Mr. Tom Franklin for sending that video to us because it's really, really good to get inside the stadium, I guess, perspective. And we got Scott as well who does that. And I really am thankful for Tom's question on that. But thank you guys for joining us tonight. I am Wags alongside Scott Tobin. A little late tonight. I know we had a bit of a weather delay. The rain outside kind of pushed both of us back a little bit. Our drives home were not as fun as they normally are. But Scott, first off, how you doing, man? I know it's been a long day for you. A lot of baseball, even though the rain was around. How you been doing?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. It's been a long week. I know the last couple of days have been long for you as well, but it's nice to be back and actually doing this live. It's been weird. It was weird driving home from the ballgame last night, watching my taped version of myself talking on the show.
I know it is really, really weird. I get a little self-conscious of that when I actually see it or when I go back and re-listen to a show. It's kind of like, ooh, that's what I sound like? Okay, I guess that's okay. I think we can manage that. So big game today for the Cardinals. They went for the sweep against the Arizona Diamondbacks. They did get it a 7-4 victory. And I kind of want to have you answer that question that Tom put out there first. Is this a turning point? Is this something that the Cardinals can grasp a hold of, even though it is a terrible Diamondbacks team? Is it one of those series that could essentially change the rest of the season because they got themselves right?
It could be. It could be. You sweep the Diamondbacks. You won one of the last two games against Pittsburgh, so it's 4 out of 5 now. So you're feeling pretty good about yourself going into Colorado. But, the Rockies aren't very good either. So you've got to go to Colorado now and really kind of put your foot on their throat and win, 3 out of 4 in that series. If you do that, then you can really start thinking, okay, we've turned a corner and here we come. And, you can start looking at the fact that, okay, this team's going to start getting healthy. Harrison Bader was in the dugout by the end of the game today. He's going to go with the team on this road trip, and hopefully we'll be playing at some point in Colorado, if not tomorrow night. So that's a good thing. All signs are we're going to get good news on Jordan Hicks by the end of the week, that things are progressing, and maybe, we can see a light at the end of the tunnel, that we're going to get him back in the bullpen maybe after the All-Star break. So there's a positive thing. Cody Whitley is on a rehab assignment, so there's another piece to your bullpen. It came out today that Miles Michaelis is going to start revving things up around the All-Star break. So you're starting to think maybe you're going to get him back the end of August, first part of September. There's still the big question is Jack. I've heard things that he could be back in August. I've heard he might not be back until September. Wow. So, but you are definitely starting to get healthy. And if you can go into Colorado, win 2 or 3 games out of that series and start to feel good about yourselves before you finish, this first half with the Cubs and the Giants, if the Cardinals can get themselves to within 5 games of the Brewers by the break, I think all of a sudden you've put pressure on Mo in the front office again, where you say, okay, here we come. You've got to go make that move that makes us a legit contender, because we've got a whole lot of games with Milwaukee. I think there's 12 games with the Brewers in the second half. So, the opportunity is going to be there. If they can make a little run here in this next 2 weeks and get themselves within striking distance at the All-Star break, I think you really put pressure on Mo to make a move to really make this team competitive as you go down the stretch in the second half.
And you talk a little bit about the fact that Colorado is terrible right now. You look at the Cubs too, and after a kind of a surprisingly hot start, they've been absolutely terrible as well the last couple of weeks, really. And the last couple of games as well, they've just been, I don't even know how to explain it. How do you go from leading a couple of different games or having games tied and then giving up 12 and 14 unanswered runs against Milwaukee? Does that show you that Milwaukee is the class of the NL Central, or is it more so a testament to the Cubs just being very, very bad?
Well, I think if you're the Cardinals, you have to look at it and go, okay, so, the Cubs were really hot for a while. Everybody was talking about how good the Cubs bullpen was, and it was kind of the thing that was really driving that team. Well, now they've hit a big roadblock. They've kind of fell apart, kind of imploded against Milwaukee. So now the Cubs have kind of fallen back to you. They're in second place and only 2 games ahead of you. So if you're the Cardinals, you look at that and go, okay, so now we win a couple of games. We can jump over the Reds. We can jump over the Cubs. And then you get closer to the Brewers. And you talk about the Brewers. Yeah, they're really hot right now. But we've kind of seen this in this division. The Cardinals were really hot in April and May, made that run, had the best record in the National League for a little while. Then they cooled off. Then the Cubs got hot for a while. Now it's the Brewers' turn. So if you're the Cardinals, you're going, okay, let's just keep afloat while the Brewers are hot. Let's get healthy and then, stay within striking distance, and it's our turn to make that run. I don't think the Brewers are that good. Their pitching has been the thing that has really led them. But we've seen the same thing with the Brewers that we saw a couple of years ago, where they've really relied on their bullpen a whole lot in this first half. And can they kind of wear them down to maybe where they don't hold up in the second half? And they've gotten a lot more out of their starting rotation than they expected. And their lineup's still really not doing a whole lot. So I think that there's coming a point here before too terribly long where the Brewers are going to come back to earth. And then it's just a question of, can the Cardinals capitalize on that?
And you're going to start seeing that with the Cardinals getting healthy. KK today, 5 innings, 3 hits, an earned run, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. Just another decently effective start for him. He's not a guy that's going to go 7 innings. He's not going to go 8 or 9 or anything like that. He's not going to be overly dominant. But because you're starting to get guys healthy, it allows them to slide what they've already done, John Gant, into the bullpen. Well, now Gant can come in and pitch a couple of innings on the back end of a KK start. He went 2, gave up just a hit and a walk. And then you can lead right into that, lights out bullpen. I know Roel Ramirez didn't do so well today, 3 earned runs against, but Ryan Helsley and Alex Reyes both came in. Reyes, too, considering he had a 2-inning save last night, to come in and get another save, his 20th on the year. It means that they are getting towards the end of the first half, which means Reyes will get a bit of a break. But a little surprised that he was available again today after a 2-inning save last night.
Normally I don't think he would have been, but the fact that the Cardinals have been so bad, he really hasn't pitched much in June. So I think it was a situation where he was really fresh, and so they were able to go out there. And he threw 2 innings last night, but he only threw 32 pitches in those 2 innings. So it wasn't like It wasn't like he was really overworked going into the game today, and he was dominant. And something about Alex Reyes that's really being overlooked. Nobody's talking about this. Alex Reyes now has converted 22 straight saves in his major league career. He's never blown one. The major league record is 23. He's one away from tying the major league record for most saves to start a career. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive. And, I mean, you talk about Alex Reyes, and I still saw people today going, man, we need to make Gallegos a closer because Reyes makes me nervous. The guy's got an 0.94 earned run average. I mean, he's unhittable. The only trouble he gets in is that he walks people. Nobody can touch him with a bat. I mean, the guy's just absolutely filthy, and he's as dominant as we thought he was going to be 3 or 4 years ago when he was the top pitching prospect in baseball.
Well, and the other part of it is the maturity level, because I was watching the game last night at hockey, and, you know, he gives up the leadoff single in the 8th inning. The guy moves over on a balk when he tried to pick him off, and then a single, and all of a sudden it's 1st and 3rd, no outs. He bears down and he gets a strikeout, and then he gets a double play ball to end the inning. I mean, that's something that a lot of people would not have expected out of Alex Reyes last year, maybe even earlier this year. And it's going to make things a lot tougher when a guy like Jordan Hicks does come back. How do you slot that that bullpen now? Is Alex Reyes your closer? And then you put Hicks in front of him and Gallegos in front of him. And on piggybacking on that, there was a rumor I heard out today that said that, you know, the Cardinals may want to look at making Giovanni Gallegos available as a trade option. Is that something that could be in play if the Cardinals were to continue to struggle after the All-Star break?
Yeah, no, I don't see that happening. Just because even if the Cardinals do struggle, they're thinking they're going to rebound next year and be competitive. So I don't see them trading anybody, to be totally honest with you, off of this major league roster at the trade deadline, no matter what happens. You know, if they really struggle, I think they'll just stay pat. But yeah, I don't see them moving a guy like Gallegos, who's a huge weapon and will be a big piece of that bullpen and is still under team control for another couple of years. I don't see that happening at all.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why that was even a consideration, trying to get picks or what have you. It just didn't make any sense. But so you said Jordan Hicks is likely or potentially coming back right around the All-Star break, if not after. And like I said earlier, where does he slot in? Is Alex Reyes there? Or because Reyes hasn't pitched as much and they want to get him to 100 innings, do they end up moving him out of that 9th inning role and put him into something like like the John Gant thing, a couple innings after a KK or a couple innings after a Wainwright if he goes short? Or do you keep Reyes in that spot and try not to disrupt his flow?
Yeah, I think they're going to keep him right where he is. I mean, you know, you want the kid to have, you know, this is his first healthy year in 3 or 4 years. Yeah. You want him just to have a dominant year and not do anything to disrupt him. And you don't want to bring Jordan Hicks back and immediately throw him in a high pressure role either. I would imagine when Hicks comes back, he's going to be your 6th or 7th inning guy. Probably not see real high leverage situations, at least at first. You know, Cabrera will probably be that 7th inning guy, and Hicks filling in, you know, like I said, 5th, 6th inning, 7th inning every once in a while. But they're going to be really careful with him. You know, it's been a year and a half really since he's really pitched much in the major leagues. So I don't see him stepping into a high leverage role right away.
Okay, it's September. It's down the stretch, and the Cardinals are fighting for a division title. And you're able to throw out Hicks, Cabrera, Gallegos, Reyes as their final 4 in the bullpen. Does that give you a lot of confidence?
It does, and it should. And, you know, I mean, that's what everybody thought we were going to have going into the season. I mean, that's what you got to look at when you look at this team. We've not had the team that we thought we were going to have all year long. I mean, I saw that stat again today. The starting lineup that they envisioned when the season started, those 8 guys have played together in 4 games this year.
Oof.
You know, and then you've only had Hicks for about 3 weeks. You know, Flaherty's missed 2 months. You haven't had Michaelis at all, and all those other injuries. I mean, this team just has not been complete yet. And so it has to give. I mean, to be really honest, I know so many people are down and they're horrible, and this is the worst Cardinal team I've ever seen, and blah blah blah. But you know, when this team gets healthy, look out. You know, and I've said that for a couple of weeks now because they have the potential. And just look at that line. I mean, look what that lineup can do when you have a day like today, when you have Goldie going and you have Tyler O'Neill going and you have Yachty going and Dylan Carlson starting to hit. I mean, this lineup can be really scary. And I think the pitching staff is only going to get better.
I agree 100%. And speaking of that lineup, a guy like Goldschmidt today goes 3 for 5, drives in a run, scores a run. His batting average now up to 252. And I know you look at batting averages and you say, 260s, 250s, 270s. But for the Cardinals, I mean, that's kind of where you're expecting them to be. You got Carlson up at the top at 267, Goldie at 252 and rising, Arenado 267, O'Neal's batting 272 right now, even Yadier Molina 254. Edman has been on a decline, still batting around 258, and Mundo Sosa, the fact that he's down in the lineup, down in the 8th spot or so, that's exactly where you want a guy like Sosa, because it's a low pressure situation and it allows him to get the at-bats that he needs as a young player. And if you've got the top of that lineup really clicking, you can deal with the struggles of a Sosa because of the defense he brings you, even though, yes, he did have an error today, but we're going to put that aside because most of the time he's a pretty good defensive shortstop. This is exactly like you said, what this team envision things to be looking like. And as you continue to get more people back into the lineup and healthy, it's going to be really, really scary. The one thing that you looked at today, though, and you're like, yeah, Matt Carpenter at second. Yippee.
Yeah, it's just one of those days. You're going to get him some at-bats every once in a while because you need to, because at some point you're going to need him to come off the bench and get a big hit. And people can say, why do you want him to come off the bench? But you got to remember, he has had some big pinch hit at-bats this year in some big games. So you've got to keep him a little bit fresh. You know what I've found really surprising today? You talked about that error Sosa made today, and actually that first base runner in the 8th inning last night off of Reyes. Sosa made an error on that one too. So that was 2 errors. That was 2 errors 2 days in a row. He's made 7 errors already, which in limited time that he's played, which really surprised me because everybody talks about how good defensively he is, and you've seen some flashy plays, but that's a lot of errors in the little amount of time he's played in.
It really is. And Paul DeJong is no slouch when it comes to defense. He's not a bad defender. He's in the Gold Glove conversation the last couple of years. So it's not like you're sacrificing a ton when you have Paul DeJong out there defensively. And even though he's still struggling a little bit, you do start to see a couple of flashes here and there from a Paul DeJong. That being said, there's a guy that we're going to see this weekend in Colorado named Trevor Story that might possibly be on the trade block when everything is said and done. Now, the optics behind the Cardinals trading with the Rockies for another star player probably would not play well in Colorado, and it makes a deal for Story very unlikely. But is there a way that the Cardinals might be able to find a chance of getting Story in here? And if that's the case, would they be able to extend him as well?
Before we get into that, let's just talk about Trevor Story this year. Because if I told you, let's compare Trevor Story and Paul DeJong this year. If I told you that Paul DeJong's hitting 170, which is about what he's hitting right now, Trevor Story's hitting 240. Guess which one of them? Paul DeJong's missed a month and struggled all year, right? Paul DeJong has 2 more home runs than Trevor Story does. And Trevor Story only has 8 more RBIs than Paul DeJong has. So you're paying Paul DeJong $5 million. Trevor Story is making $18 million. Do you really want to make that? Do you really want to make that move?
Ooh, I mean, it's a gamble, because if you can get Story in here and get him righted in a sense, and you put him there with Nolan Arenado, one of his friends from Colorado, I think $18 million might be a steal. With Paul DeJong, and I've been a Paul DeJong supporter for a while. I push people saying, hey, give him a chance, get him out there, let him get some repetitions and see what he really can bring. But I'm getting closer and closer to the point of saying, I don't think he can recover. I mean, ever since the All-Star selection he had a couple years ago, he's really gone downhill. He's not had a great average. He's not done much at the plate. I mean, yes, he's hit home runs and he's driven some guys in, but it's kind of boom or bust with him. It's almost like Tyler O'Neill from the last couple of years with strikeouts and not being able to drive in runners. If I could see in my future Paul DeJong recovering and rebounding and hitting 270, 280 with the home runs and the RBIs, I'd say totally understand. I would give Paul DeJong that chance. But the last year and a half or so, he has just taken a sharp decline. And I would probably, if the price is right, I would take the gamble of flipping Paul DeJong for Trevor Story. You know, you have to probably throw in a couple other pieces as well, but I would be on board with flipping DeJong for Story for sure.
See, and I can understand where you're coming from. My whole thing with Paul DeJong is, the All-Star year, he wore down at the end of the second half of that season. I don't look at last year because he ended up getting COVID last year. And, and by all accounts, it really beat him down last year, and he was never the same guy. This year, he's had injuries. He's been up and down. If you're expecting Paul DeJong to be a 280 hitter, that's probably never going to happen. He's going to be a 240, 250 type hitter, but he's going to give you 25 to 30 home runs and 75, 80 RBIs. The thing and I've made this argument a couple of times on other shows in the past, I'm not sure that if you take Trevor Story out of Colorado, he's not exactly what Paul DeJong is, because I think if you put Paul DeJong in Colorado in that hitter's ballpark, he puts up the numbers that Story has. You got to look at, and people get mad at me when I make this argument, and I do it all the time. You got to realize Busch Stadium is not a good hitter's ballpark. It just isn't. It's always one of the lowest stadiums in the league for home runs. Opponent's batting average is always is in the lower 1/3 of the league every year. It's a pitcher's ballpark. So you have to take that into effect. And, I said that about guys like Marcell Ozuna, when people made that argument, they should have got Yelich instead of Ozuna. Same thing. I think if you flip those guys and Ozuna goes to Milwaukee and Yelich comes here, they do the exact opposite of what they did. I just think this ballpark is a difficult place to hit in, especially for right-handed hitters. And I'm not sure that Trevor Story would be a big upgrade over Paul DeJong. That was a long way around that subject, but I just don't really think it's that much of an upgrade, honestly, playing at Busch Stadium.
See, and I don't think, for me, I look at it as where he's playing, because you do look at it and you say, okay, playing at Coors, and Nolan's numbers were inflated a little bit, but he had great splits, so it's not like Coors Field lifted him up higher than he actually was. But I look at it more so about the lineup, the fan base, and things all around, like the organization as a whole. And I feel like a Trevor Story could come in here with the lineup that this team has and still produce. So that's kind of where my thought process and argument would go. It's not so much where he plays, it's about who he plays with, the fan base that he would play in front of. So that's kind of another piece as to why I would definitely be on board it. But, like I said, I have been a Paul DeJong fan for a few years now, and really, really push people to give him a chance. So I'm not going to be disappointed if the Cardinals don't make a deal, but I'm also not going to be like super upset if they do make a deal, because I definitely do feel like this team does still need a bit of a shakeup. And it may not come in the firing of a manager or a bench coach or anything like that. It may come from training a guy that maybe not necessarily is untouchable, but has been a part of this organization for a while. So we'll see how that kind of plays out as well. And yes, Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, there is a team that is actually worse than the Cardinals. There's actually a couple of teams. And thankfully, the Cardinals handled their business this week with the 3-game sweep of the Diamondbacks. You had a great pitching performance from Adam Wainwright. You had, I'll say it, a great pitching performance from Carlos last night. And that's the Carlos that we hope to see the rest of the year. Not sure if that's going to happen, but it was nice to see him go out there and pitch well. And he looked like he was having fun. And I think that's the thing that people get upset about, is when Carlos is out there looking like he's having fun, they don't think he's taking things seriously. But that's probably when he's pitching at his best, is when he's having fun. And you saw the shimmy shake on the mound last night. It was nice because the team had a lead and he was pitching well and everything was good. I'm like you in a sense with Carlos. I'm still bullish on him being a guy that can be productive for this team and actually be a contributor to this rotation.
It was really interesting listening to Mike Schultz's comments, because Rick Hummel asked him after the game last night. He basically said, if Carlos would have pitched bad tonight, would that have been it for him in the rotation? And Schultz said, that's not out of the realm of possibility. And he said that he and Mad Dog Maddox had a talk with Carlos, a very pointed talk. And they said that it really sunk into Carlos. Carlos really got it that, okay, I have to do better. I have to be better, or my days are numbered. And so maybe that's the thing that wakes Carlos up, and he realizes, okay, I have to be a different guy now on the mound. I can't have those games where I'm really, really good and look like the old Carlos for 2 or 3 starts, and then I blow up for 4 in a row. So hopefully, we see that. Hopefully he does figure it out and understands. And I mean, that would be huge. I've said it all year, especially that stretch where he was really, really good in May. If Carlos can be that Carlos, he's as talented as anybody. He's got as much talent as Jack Flaherty, honestly.
Yeah.
He just has to have his head on right. And, Carlos talked about that sometimes his focus just isn't where it should be. And the fact that he knows that and he understands it, I realize you have to figure out a way to make it work. But the fact that he realizes that is at least a sign that he understands, okay, some nights I'm just not where I need to be. And hopefully he can figure out a way to make that work and be more consistent.
It shows a little bit of a maturity level for sure when he can actually sit back and say, yes, I know this is the case. And maybe, like you said, these conversations the last couple of days have really sunk in that my time might be done here. And if I don't improve and pitch well, I may not be on this team. I may not even be in this league for very much longer. And that's a sobering reality for somebody like that who is, kind of a baby Pedro-esque type of guy where a lot of success, a lot of potential, and not much to show for it, although he has had good seasons. So it's going to be real interesting. And you're going to see really, really quickly if this is a new Carlos Martinez, because he is getting the 4th game of this Colorado series coming up this weekend. You've got Wainwright going tomorrow night. Johan Oviedo is going on Friday. I don't know if you want to throw him out there in Coors, but we'll see. Wade LeBlanc gets game 3 on Saturday, and then Martinez versus Germain Marquez on Sunday afternoon. Then you get to travel to the first place San Francisco Giants for 3 games. You got Kim, Wainwright, and right now Oviedo as the 3 starters in that matchup. And then you finish up with Chicago for the rest of, or for the 9th through the 11th of July. LeBlanc is going to get the first game of that. And we put a question out there yesterday about the first place teams, contenders, pretenders, and we're getting ready to go see one of those first place teams in the San Francisco Giants. And I got to ask you, are they a contender or are they a pretender? Because I think everybody is shocked at where they're sitting at right now, especially in a division with the Padres and the Dodgers. It's shocking where they're at, but are they for real or are they going to fall off?
Man, I'm not sure. I really haven't seen them yet. I'm not sure how they're doing this. I mean, I know the old guys, the Buster Posies and the Brandon Belts and the Brandon Crawfords have had comeback years. But like you said, everybody's shocked. I actually had the Giants finishing in last place in the West. I had them worse than the Rockies going into the season. So I'm really, really shocked. But you've had guys like Kevin Gausman and Johnny Cueto step up and find that fountain of youth. Can that last for a whole season? I'm not sure. I'm really not, especially in that division when you've got the Dodgers and the Padres nipping at your heels. It's going to be interesting. I would guess, if I had to guess, I would say of the 3 teams that are in first place in the National League right now, they're probably the one that I would say I think they're most likely to miss the playoffs. But it's going to be interesting to see. And we always have trouble in San Francisco.
Yes, we do.
Going back to those playoff runs where we would match up with them, San Francisco has just seemed to have our number, especially out there. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully we have Harrison Bader back to play center field, because that could be an adventure in that big outfield. If you've got Carlson in center and Tommy Edman in right, that would give me nightmares, honestly.
It would. And like you said at the beginning of the segment, Harrison Bader is going with the team to Colorado, and it looks like all indications are that he will be playing tomorrow night. He will be in the lineup for the Cardinals, which is good news. And like you said, Cody Whitley is getting a rehab assignment as well. Miles Michaelis hopefully starting to go. Jordan Hicks and others are looking to come back right around, or if not after the All-Star break. It's going to be real interesting for sure. And I want to touch on one more pitcher before we move on to our next topic. The futures lineups were announced the other day, and Matthew Liberatore is going to be on the futures in the futures game. He helped the U.S. Olympic team pitch their way into the Olympics, and he's been doing decently well down in the minor leagues. And there were rumors that he may be coming up in the next week or so, maybe to get a little bit of major league experience, but the Cardinals have kind of righted the ship a little bit. But with Johan Oviedo maybe struggling a little bit, do we see Liberatore here before the All-Star break, or are they going to look and see how he finishes the first half, pitches in the Futures game, and then maybe get him in right after the second half starts?
Yeah, I think he's right on the doorstep. It's very possible that he's up here before the All-Star break. If Oviedo really struggles again, or if Carlos really struggles again, or for that matter, even KK, because like you said, KK got through 5 innings tonight, but it wasn't easy. There were a ton of base runners, walks, hit batters, all kinds of stuff. He's only made it through 5 innings twice this year. So yeah, I think Liberatore is here, if not by the All-Star break, before the end of July. Honestly, I think we're going to see him make his major league debut, and his good friend and other Futures team member, Mr. Nolan Gorman, may also be up here before too terribly long as well. If he has 2 or 3 really good weeks in AAA and a couple of people struggle up here, you may see Nolan Gorman in the major leagues faster than anybody really thought.
And you brought up a very interesting question about that last night, in a sense, coming off of the heels of Tommy Edman's comments about a week or so ago about preparedness and all of that, and a little bit of his struggles as well. If Nolan Gorman were to come up and play second base and produce at a pretty good level, is Tommy Edman a guy that might be on his way out? And if that's the case, do other teams in Major League Baseball view him in the same light that the Cardinals do? The Cardinals feel like they put him up a little bit higher than we think he needs to go, but would other Major League Baseball teams see him in that light? And is there anything that they can use to, lift his, I guess, image up a little bit to maybe get a little bit better return for him?
Well, and he has played better the last couple of days. He's had a couple of hits the last 2 days, so he's looked a little bit better at the plate. But yeah, Tommy Edman's a guy that has to be looking kind of over his shoulder right now, because if Gorman does come up here, he's going to probably play second base. And then, does Edman kind of become that Ben Zobrist guy where you play a couple of positions every week, different places? Is that kind of which is kind of what the role the Cardinals had envisioned for him originally? Or do you use him as a trade piece? I mean, he could be a guy that a lot of teams would see as really valuable because of the fact that he can play all of those positions. So you never know. And you've got a bunch of infielders now coming up. We've talked about some of the guys they have on the team right now, and then you've got a kid like Delvin Perez who's finally starting to show some stuff in AAA as well. He could also be a guy that you could bring up here as a bench player, or he could be a trade piece. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Tommy Edman's future unfolds over the next couple of months with this ball club.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff for sure. Okay, let's go ahead and jump over to the NHL, because not only do we have the Stanley Cup Finals going on right now, there's also a little bit more news closer to home that I don't know if you would say it's surprising or not. But over the last couple of days, there's been a lot of talk about the fact that the Blues might be shopping forward Vladimir Tarasenko. Now, Tarasenko has a no trade clause that he would have to waive, but it's very telling where he sits with this organization that this kind of report were to come out that the Blues are actually allowing him, or are shopping him, allowing teams to call and inquire about him. Before the end of the season, I was one of those that advocated for leaving him exposed in the expansion draft. Now, looking at the rules, he may not actually be eligible to be picked in the expansion draft. There's still a little bit of gray area with that. Not entirely sure if that's 100% correct, but it doesn't necessarily mean he won't be a part of the Seattle Kraken's plan going forward, because the Blues can technically trade him to Seattle. And if Seattle's looking to get up from the cap floor, they're looking to bring in a veteran forward, something of that nature, you might see a guy like Tarasenko go to Seattle among other teams. There's actually a couple of other teams that are out there that people think he may fit with: the Calgary Flames, the New Jersey Devils. The big one that people think it's more likely is the LA Kings, which, yikes, I would not like to see him in a Kings jersey for sure. You also have, teams like the Islanders, the Flyers, the Wild, and the Rangers as other teams that might be suitable for Vladimir Tarasenko. One team that's not listed, but some people really throw this out there is Vegas as well, another team that could potentially make a play for Vladimir. Like I said, it's not a surprise that these conversations might be happening, but it's still a shock. I think that this guy that's coming off of 3 shoulder surgeries is now being asked to be traded, and he's still got $7.5 million on his contract. He's not asking to be traded, but it feels like there's a little bit of push from the Tarasenko camp as well. I don't know. What are your thoughts on all this that's gone really down in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, we've talked about it several times over the last couple of years, whether the Blues should start thinking about trading Vladdy. I'm really surprised that it's come up and has gotten as big as it has the last couple of days. I mean, like you said, he came out and gave the Blues apparently a list of teams that he was willing to go to drop that no trade. But then in the last 12 hours or so, I've also heard that a lot of people say that he would not block any trade, that anywhere the Blues can trade him, he will go. And the fact that you're at that point, I don't see how you bring him back. I mean, because it's obvious that he's ready to go. The team's ready to move on without him. I think he's gone, man. I don't see any way you bring him back and it's a great situation, because if you do bring him back, if you can't trade him, is he really going to put a whole lot of effort into going out on the ice every night knowing that you didn't really want him here and he's not sure he really wants to be here? So I think he's gone. An interesting trade proposal that I heard, and you brought up the Rangers. I don't remember who I heard talking about this today, but tell me what you think about this. How about a 3-chain trade? You trade Vladdy to the Rangers, and then some Blues young players and some Rangers young players go to a place called Calgary, and some guy named Matthew Tkachuk ends up in St. Louis because Calgary got 4 or 5 young players.
See, that's why one of the reasons why Calgary was thrown into that list of teams was because the Matthew Tkachuk situation is just kind of like Vladimir's, where he doesn't that seems like Vladimir doesn't want to be here in a sense. Matthew Tkachuk wants out of Calgary. That is no question whatsoever. I don't think Vlad really wants out of St. Louis, but I think he does like the idea of a change of scenery. And I think the Blues, it's not so much bad blood. I think it really is just a matter of the Blues and Tarasenko going, look, we've had a great run. We've won a Stanley Cup. I've had a lot of fun here. Maybe a change of scenery is good for everybody. I don't think it's a bad blood situation, whereas the Tkachuk thing, it is a bad blood situation. And you can't do a straight-up Tarasenko for Tkachuk trade. You can't – I don't even know if they have the pieces to bring in a Matthew Tkachuk. But I do like your idea of if you can ship Tarasenko to New York, and New York and the Blues can kind of pool their prospects to Calgary for Tkachuk, holy moly, would that be a massive, massive deal. And it would just once again show you that Doug Armstrong knows what he's doing. It shows you that Tom Stillman is committed, because they did say they were going to spend to the cap yet again this year. And you also have to remember, you guys like James Schwartz have to be re-signed. You're going to have Colton Parayko coming up as well. That one's still kind of not really sure what the plan is for that. There's also rumors out there that the Blues may go after a guy like Alec Martinez coming out of Vegas to add to that defensive core. So you do have to free up money if you're going to make some moves like that. But Tarasenko being moved is exactly what you have to do. And that was the impetus behind me suggesting, expose him for the expansion draft, because you could get that money freed up, or you get a pissed off Tarasenko that wants to prove everybody wrong. Well, now you can make a trade, get that money off the books, and either bring in another guy with that kind of salary that may help you improve, or you open up the books for free agency. So I'm not as, I guess, upset that he's being shopped. I just really am looking at what the return is going to be and who he may go to, because like I said, I do not want to see him going to LA, because I think if he goes to LA, he'll revitalize his career. I think he revitalizes his career wherever he goes. It may not be superstar level, but I think he'll be very consistent. But I don't want to see him go to LA, because I don't like LA. I really don't like LA at all.
Yeah. No, I think if the Blues trade him, I think he's going to probably go to the East. I mean, I don't think they want him in the same division or even in the same conference, honestly, if they trade him. So that's why the whole Rangers thing would make a lot of sense. You send him to the East, you get through a couple of kids, and then you make that deal for Tkachuk. Here's a question for you. If you get Matthew Tkachuk this offseason, how long till we can go after Brady and just bring them both to St. Louis?
Ottawa is pretty dumb in a sense, but I don't see them letting him go. I think you would have to wait probably to free agency. If he gets to free agency, I think that's the play. But I think Ottawa at least, and I don't think Brady Tkachuk is as upset about his situation in Ottawa as Tkachuk is in Calgary. But the lure of coming home to play with your brother on your team, if he hits free agency, that's going to be stop number one for him. He's going to go straight to the Blues and go, okay, what do you have available, and how will that work for me? Because if he can come down here and the Blues say, we can give you this amount of money, and Brady's like, done. There you go. That's it right there. Could you imagine a line of Tkachuk, and Thomas? I mean, the triple T line?
That would be pretty good. That brings up a pretty good question, though. Do you think Robert Thomas would have to be in the trade to get Matthew Tkachuk?
Oh, see, that's the thing. It's probably going to be one of Thomas or Kyrou that's going to have to go to Calgary if that's the case, and that's going to be a hard pill to swallow either way. Because if you see back over here, this Blues clown jersey over here, it's got Thomas's name. That's got Thomas's name on the back of it. I really don't want Robert Thomas to go. I think he has a lot of potential here. I think he's a very slick puck mover. He's a guy that can make a lot of plays. I think he actually has a little bit more upside than a Jordan Kyrou does. So if you could get away with trading Jordan Kyrou to Calgary for Matthew Tkachuk, I think that would be a little bit better for me in my eyes. Because I just don't know if I'd want to lose a guy like Robert Thomas. He's a guy that plays center. And what do you build your team around? It's right up the middle. You have to have centers. You have to have a good, strong defensive core, and you have to have good goaltending. Well, if you trade away one of your centers, and I know you've got Braden Shen and Ryan O'Reilly and a couple other guys, but Robert Thomas could be the future. And Blues Fan Reacts chimes in, Thomas is greater than Kyrou. So if you can get Kyrou as part of the deal to Calgary for Tkachuk, done deal. If Thomas is the guy that they want, I would definitely have to take a step back and go, is there something else we can do?
See, I was curious to get your opinion because I've heard a lot of people say it the other way, that they would trade Thomas but wouldn't trade Kyrou. And wouldn't it be interesting if Robert Thomas got traded for Matthew Tkachuk, knowing how close they are, since Robert Thomas lived at Tkachuk house for a while? Those guys are like brothers. So it would be a shame if they got traded for each other and didn't end up getting to play together.
And that's the other piece of it, because if you do bring in a Tkachuk, you want a guy here that he can play with, that he's familiar with. And having a guy like Thomas, there's that instant familiarity right there. Whereas you bring him in and play him with the Jordan Kyrou, the dynamics would still probably be there, but there's just something about playing the game with someone that you've played the game with for so long that it makes things easier. And Blues Fan Reacts, one of his Calgary mutuals said, Senko and Parayko for Tkachuk. What say you? Deal in a heartbeat, but that's not what Calgary's taking.
Right.
I mean, Vladimir's coming off 3 shoulder surgeries, and Parayko's coming off a back injury. You're not getting away with trading both of those guys for a Matthew Tkachuk unless Calgary is absolutely the most foolish organization in the NHL. It's possible. Doug Armstrong's worked miracles before. I just don't think that's the case. It's not Buffalo.
No, that's not going to get it done. And I mean, if you trade Colton Parayko, then what do you do on defense? Because he was supposed to be the next Petro. Who steps up into that role at that point?
That's a great question. I mean, you have to have, Justin Falk is your number one right now. Torrey Krug, I think, will have a better season next year. Not to say that he had a poor season this year. He will have a better season next year. And he may only have 1 or 2 of those left for the Blues, and they're going to be staring down the bad end of a contract, but not as bad as what Petro's might be. But then you got Scandella. You also have to remember you got a guy coming up in Scotty Perunovich who could very well fill that Vince Dunn role because he's a better version of Vince Dunn, I believe. And you right now do have Vince Dunn on this team, although once the expansion draft takes place next month, you may not. So Nico Mikkola is another guy that could step up into that bigger role as well. And you got a couple other guys down. Jake Wallman impressed at the end of the season too. So the Blues do have options. I still think Parayko is a guy that could really, really make an impact here in St. Louis. But, I mean, he's got to prove it. He's improved year over year up until last year, but he dealt with the injury. I think if you see a healthy Parayko next year, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised.
Yeah, and we need, like you said, they need him to be because they definitely missed him this year when he had all of those injuries and wasn't on the ice. So it's going to be definitely a fun offseason to talk Blues hockey. There's going to be a lot of rumors to talk about, I think.
Oh, yeah, lots of rumors. Well, the Tampa Bay Lightning took another step toward a second straight Stanley Cup tonight as they take out Montreal 3-1. Goals by Anthony Cirelli, Blake Coleman, and Andre Palat for the Lightning. Nick Suzuki got a power play goal in the second period for Montreal. And Tampa Bay is going to head to Montreal with a 2-0 series lead. I still don't think this series is over, but Montreal needs to get a little bit more from the offensive side of things. I mean, when you get a guy like Nick Suzuki being the guy that scores your lone goal, it's not boding well for the Canadians. Although the hits are up there, Montreal still got out-hit again tonight. And that's the one thing that I looked at going into the series is if Montreal can out-hit Tampa and wear them down, it could make for a long series. But right now, Tampa is holding up and actually out-hitting Montreal. If that continues the rest of the way, this is going to be an easy win for Tampa Bay. And Mason actually said it the other night. He said he called Tampa Bay in 4. And we kind of laughed at him. But after watching the last 2 games, I'm not so much going to not back him.
Yeah, I did see the show. I heard him say that. So it's going to be interesting. The thing, and I know you don't believe in home field advantage and all home ice advantage and all that stuff and momentum. But the good thing for Montreal is they are going back to Canada. So at least they have that home crowd for the next couple of games. At least they're not down 0-2 and going to Tampa. So that could play in their favor a little bit. But yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I think they will win one of these games. I think they won one, but I think it's probably going to be a 5-game series. Honestly, the way it looks right now.
Yeah, the way it looks right now, and like you said, home ice advantage, home field, home court, what have you. If you hold serve, then the first 2 games don't mean anything. If you go back to Tampa, tied at 2, it's a whole new series, and then you just have to steal one on the road. But if you do lose one of those games, it is pretty much all over. And no Blues fan reacts. I have not yet seen the Edmonton play, but if it's the worst gap in Stanley Cup history, then that has to be something. So that'll definitely be something we're going to have to check out for sure. Today, I'm going to switch gears real quick. It came out today because we're 1 day away from a lot of new laws going into effect in different states. And one of those is the impact of the NIL for the NCAA. And it came out today that the NCAA is now going to allow every student athlete the opportunity to make money off of their likeness. And this is a huge turn of events when it comes to amateurism in sports and in the college model. It basically clears the way for them to do everything that they want when it comes to name, image, and likeness deals. Now, there are still some things that you can't do. I mean, in some states, you're not going to be able to endorse tobacco or liquor or things like that. And a lot of them are saying, hey, you have to follow the state's rules, but outside of that, it's free reign. Are you shocked at the quick turnaround for the NCAA in a sense, or is it really just a matter of the fact that tomorrow all these laws go into effect and the NCAA is just trying to cover their ass until they can come up with a better plan?
Yeah, no, they didn't really have an option. This was really the only course of action they had at this point was to go ahead and allow this to happen until they figure out exactly how they're gonna set the rules and how they're gonna make this all work. But yeah, they really had their backs against the wall.
And it's still preventing the NCAA from having schools to pay their players directly. So that you're going to start to see, I think, I don't know if I would call it shadiness, but you might see some workarounds in a sense when it comes to players getting paid. You can't have schools directly pay, and it cannot be used as recruiting incentives or anything like that. Basically, the new rules will allow athletes to profit by monetizing social media accounts, signing autographs, teaching camps or lessons, starting their own businesses, and participating in advertising campaigns, among many other potential venues. Athletes will be allowed to sign with agents or other representatives to help them acquire endorsement deals. And that's in an article from Dan Murphy over at ESPN. It came out about 4 o'clock today. So once again, it's allowing them to have things like jobs or to use their names and likenesses to get camps set up or have their social media accounts followed and things along those natures. But are we going to potentially see some of these roundabout avenues coming along? I mean, we've seen it with the illegal stuff with Adidas and all those other things. Are we going to still continue to see those shady dealings in a sense?
Oh, yeah. Nothing's going to change them. It's given them more avenues to make money off their likeness and things like that. But as far as, saying, oh, schools can't directly pay them, they have agents. The schools can pay the agents, and that stuff's been going on behind closed doors anyway, so that's not going to change. But yeah, the schools are still going to pay them. The 5-star athletes are still going to get paid by the schools, by the big time donors. I mean, the stuff that's going on for 50 years, 60 years is still going to happen. It's hush hush, and people go, "Oh, that doesn't happen." Well, sure it does. There's a reason why 18-year-old kids that are on full academic scholarships are driving BMWs and Mercedes. Where do you think that money's coming from?
It's not coming from their savings account for sure. So we'll see more things along the lines of these laws as this goes on. NCAA is still trying to have Congress come up with more uniform national kind of setup. But this right now is basically allowing all student athletes throughout the NCAA the ability to use their names, images, and likenesses to make money. So it's not just limited to football or basketball players. If you're a swimmer or a golfer or things of that nature, you're still going to be able to use it and make money off of it, which is really good for them because, scholarships for the lower level stuff,
right,
it's not as lucrative as football and basketball and things like that. So it's nice to see that they're going to be able to go out and do that and be able to make some money because they do put in a lot of hard work and they do have to sacrifice a lot. So we'll definitely be keeping our ears to the floor on that as more comes out. Real quickly, Mississippi State hits Vanderbilt for their first College World Series title tonight. So congratulations to Mississippi State. Excellent job there. In the NBA, the Suns are still trying to punch their ticket to the NBA Finals tonight as they travel to LA and face the Clippers in Game 6 of that series. Right now, as the third quarter is coming to an end, the Suns have a 10-point lead, 92-82, and I mean it's getting close, man. This is a really tight game. I mean, the Clippers were able to stave off elimination in Game 4 the other night. Or Game 5, I apologize. Game 5 the other night. They're looking like they're keeping close right now, but the Suns are spreading it out. Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Ayton, 18, 17, and 12 points respectively. Marcus Morris Sr. is 21 points for the Clippers. Paul George, 15. So, the Clippers are getting contributions from everybody. Even Boogie Cousins is getting involved. 10 points tonight for him. Obviously, no Kawhi Leonard yet again. He is still out and may not even play the rest of this season, even if the Clippers were to make the finals. So do you think the Clippers have just enough to get to the finals this year, or are the Suns going to be able to hold on in this game?
No, I think the Suns are going to hold on. I've said for a while now, I thought the Suns were going to come out of the West. I think they're going to pull it off tonight, and then they'll get a couple of days to rest and get everybody healthy and wait to see who they play in the East and whoever they match up with from the East. It's going to be a pretty good finals, I do believe.
Well, speaking of the East, if you didn't see the game last night, the Hawks were able to win that game without Trae Young. He has a bone bruise in his left foot, and he was out. And it was a little surprising because I saw the final before I actually got a chance to read anything about what the game was all about. Giannis went down in that game, so that makes a little bit more sense as to why Atlanta was able to win. But there's no structural damage in Giannis's knee, so not sure if he's going to be able to play tomorrow night. But the fact that there's no structural damage is good news there for Giannis. And Trae Young will also be a game-time decision tomorrow as well with that bone bruise. So you might see a game between two teams without their star players, or you might see a game with the star players playing injured. So we'll see how that plays out. With that being 2-2 and just seeing the kind of the wild swings of that series, who do you think is going to come out of the East?
I still think it's probably going to be Milwaukee. I think they just have more on that roster than Atlanta does. I still think it's going to be a 7-game series, but I think Milwaukee comes out of there.
It's going to be tight. I think I picked the Hawks in this one in 7, so it's going to go either way. It's a very good series. It's going to be a very good series the rest of the way, so you definitely want to check that out. Once again, the Cardinals are playing in Colorado starting tomorrow night, hopefully to have Harrison Bader in the lineup. Got the rumors of Vladimir Tarasenko possibly being traded very soon. Expansion draft for the NHL is coming up in the middle of July, so we'll definitely be covering that as well. You got anything else tonight, Scott, before we head out?
Oh, I think that's pretty much it on the sports scene tonight.
It's been a fun couple of weeks for sure. I mean, even with the Cardinals losing as much as they have, there's been a lot of really, really positive and great sports stories. And we're going to have more of those as the summer progresses. I mean, baseball is here. We're going to be getting closer to the NFL training camp. There might be some XFL news coming very, very shortly as well. You got the NHL playoffs wrapping up, expansion draft, entry draft, and then before you know it, training camp will be here as well. And you got the NBA finals getting ready to kick off as well. So a lot of really, really fun things to talk about as well. And as always, Scott and I will be here every weeknight at 9 o'clock, bringing you the day in sports. So make sure you follow us there. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Hit the bell, subscribe, like, follow. Make sure you get notifications of when we're going live. Make sure you do all of that stuff. And guess what? There's going to be a guy that's going to tell you how to do that coming up right after this. So, guys, thanks you for joining us tonight, and come back every weeknight at 9 o'clock here for Toasted Tavern.
Hey, it's you-man here from Casey. For all your sports news, catch the Toasted Tavern with Scott Tobin and the man called Wags, weeknights at 9 p.m. You can follow Toasted Tavern on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Let's get toasted.